Welcome, everyone. We want to give attendees a chance to join. So while everyone gets settled, Lou, Mike, Catherine, Pete, so good to see you all here today. Let me ask,
Hello.
who's joining? Any big trips y'all are planning or any staycations?
I got Hawaii on January 1st, so if we could get through the year, we'll get a big one, but nothing till then.
Which island? Which island?
Oahu.
Nice.
Direct flight from Boston to Oahu.
Wow, that's pretty unusual, huh?
For sure.
That's great.
Love it. Mike?
For me, I've got a couple week paternity leave coming up, so that'll be my staycation. I've got my third kid due in October. Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll try to take a trip somewhere. My wife won't come, but I don't think that'd be a good idea. So we'll be.
I would advise against that.
Yeah.
You might not be alive.
As your attorney.
Yeah. I'm just kidding. I'm really looking forward to it. It's the first boy. I've got two little girls at home, so that's all that's really on my mind. No travel anytime soon.
Well, I am headed to Bora Bora in October for
Whoa.
much needed vacation. It was my 15-year wedding anniversary last year. When we got married, we were young. We just did all inclusive in Mexico and COVID hit. And so we postponed a year out. And so off we go, like just going all the way to the top of the food chain with this one, because I've been saving up for it. So I'm super excited, and they better not cancel and COVID better not hit again. And I better be on that airplane going somewhere.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Nice. I don't have anything exciting planned. That's what happens when you run a startup.
Yeah.
Yeah, hiring more AEs. That's gonna be my big plan. That's my big trip.
Nice.
Well, it sounds like you all have some great things to look forward to. I think we're ready to dive in, so let's get started. Today's event is hosted by the team at Modern Sales Pros. For those of you not familiar, Modern Sales Pros is the world's largest revenue leadership community for those in sales management, sales and rev ops, sales development, and the related supporting disciplines. Our mission at MSP is to create an environment for our 20K and growing members to answer questions they would struggle to solve on their own and help them see around corners they may not even know about. We do this through great live sessions like what you're about to experience today, through our very robust online forum, and hopefully in the near future, some in-person events. Those of you who aren't members, you'll be invited to join afterwards, and we really hope you will. If you like this content, and you will love our Revenue Excellence Summit. This is happening October 12th through the 14th, and we will be talking about the people, processes, and technology needed to help you get ready for 2022. We hope you'll register today. It's going to be a great event with a lot of fantastic folks. And I am going to go ahead and pop everything in to the chat for you all. So hopefully we'll see y'all there. But enough about MSP. As much as I would love to keep talking about it, today's session wouldn't be possible without the sponsorship from the team at Chorus. So I'm going to hand it off to Mike McDonough to say a few words about Chorus. Mike, take it away.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So Chorus is in the conversation intelligence space. It allows you to record, transcribe, analyze all, I say sales calls, but it's really all customer facing calls, so that as a business, as a sales leader, I can be in a bunch of places at once to help with coaching and understanding my pipeline and risks and my deals, as well as, folks on the customer success side of the house to make sure that they can understand churn risks, product roadmap, and overall, it gives you the agility as a business to be able to move really fast to up-level the entire organization by hearing the voice of the customer. There's a lot more than that, but I've got about 30 seconds, and I think that does a decent enough job of covering it.
We use it for all those use cases over here at Atrium.
It's amazing. I'm trying to be humble, but it's amazing.
Thank you so much, Mike. And thank you again to Chorus. Today, we will be talking about Get Unlost, tactical ways to navigate a complex sales cycle. And we are so lucky to have some really great experts in the field here to talk through this content. Lou, Mike, Catherine, before we get started, I'd love for you all to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about how you got involved with this topic, why you're so excited about it, and to be here with MSB today. So I'm going to throw it over to Catherine to kick us off.
Hi, everybody. My name is Catherine. I am a Chorus customer as well as a Zoom Info customer and have been a part of Modern Sales Pro for quite some time. So if you haven't joined, I suggest that you do. I have run sales development organizations now for probably a good 15 years. So I have been involved in the business since we used to get big old black books every single year with who was at the company before LinkedIn. I used both Discover.org, Rain King before they became Zoom Info massive conglomerates, which is awesome. So I have a lot to say about the tech stack, and that's what I think really makes this topic fantastic. And just how SDRs aren't just top of funnel. We can help throughout the different sales stages. And I think that's really important. As you are maybe running a sales organization, use your SDRs as your best tool. We're part of your stack and we can totally help you out with anything that you need assistance with. But really excited to be here. I am in such great company and can't wait to get into that nitty gritty.
All right, awesome. So great to have you here. Lou, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. Excited to be here. I'm Lou Wolf. I'm the VP of New Business Sales at Zoom Info. Started my career with a startup called Brass Ring. We got bought by Connexa, and now it's part of IBM. And I went over from there to Zoom Info and joined as a sales rep 11 years ago. We were about an $8 million company doing. I got a coin here. My CEO gave me. My first deal was a $1,000 deal.
Nice.
Back then. It's not a thing at Zoom Info anymore, but it was very transactional deals, and we've scaled over that time. I built out our first BDR organization, brought in a lot of the technologies that we're using. We've since gone through about 8 acquisitions, and everything has turned from a very on-point velocity sale to a much more complex platform sale. We'll still do move volume. My team will do about 600 deals a month, but the complexity of them has changed significantly over time. And so I'm excited about this topic because every day I'm thinking about how do we keep the velocity, but get the whole platform to the customer that they really need, and how do we balance speed with the complexity that might be part of a deal.
Nice.
Great. Can't wait to hear all you have to share today. Mike, if you'll introduce yourself.
For sure. So Mike McDonough. I'm now a senior sales manager at Zoom Info. So I was at Chorus for about 60 days before the acquisition. Super excited to be here. This company moves at light speed, and it's been really cool, not only from like an integration perspective, but just everything we do. So my background, I'm a firefighter, paramedic turned tech salesperson. Back in 2013, I made that change. That's another story for another time. But I've been a BDR, built out the BDR sales management team over at Seismic Software, moved into an individual contributor role, going after some of our larger global deals. And then loved that so much that I wanted to take on a management role and lead teams doing that. I had a brief 6-month relaxation period. Well, not really. I was raising 2 children while my wife was working in a ICU during COVID. And I'm now back here. I love talking about navigating complex deals and how a lot of that starts. Love what Catherine said. Like, it starts at the beginning with your SDRs, using them throughout the process, and really having a game plan before you even start the conversation. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you to Modern Sales Pros for having us.
We're really excited to have you. And then, of course, we have Pete. Pete, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm excited to moderate the conversation here today. I'm Pete Kazanji. I'm one of the founders of Atrium, we make data-driven sales management software that helps AE, SDR, and AM CSM managers use data to improve team performance. All I think about is sales excellence stuff. I'm one of the founders of Modern Sales Pros as well. Prior to my kind of current companies, I started a recruiting software company called Talent Bin that was acquired by Monster Worldwide in 2014. And that's where I went from kind of being like a business generalist founder to being our first sales rep, sales manager, sales leader. And kind of that's where I got my kind of like first taste of kind of like operational analytical excellence, excellent sales motions. I also wrote a book on startup sales called Founding Sales as well. And yeah, I'm just like, I actually would cop to the fact that my background is more in the like mid-markety and down kind of like, not like velocity, but like, 60, 75 day sales cycles where you have like lots of reps managing like, 50, 60, 70 ops or what have you. We have a bunch of customers that have more complicated sales motions, but this is just like an area of like interest to me. So I'm really excited to moderate the conversation here today. So that's me.
All right, great. Well, we are so happy to have all of you here. This is going to be such a fantastic panel with great discussion. So excited to dive in. But first, let's get over some few housekeeping notes. First, this event is being recorded. So great news, you'll be able to access this recording and the key takeaways on the previous events page of the MSP website. But I'll also be emailing it to all of our attendees for follow-up. So you will get that as well. Second, if you have a question for our panelists, please use the Q&A function. We'll be sure to get to them during the event, but that'll be the best way for us to make sure we're getting those questions asked and answered.
Nice.
Today, we are going to be covering how to get unlost, tactical ways to navigate a complex sales cycle, and taking a deep dive into the following. What stack to put in place to make it easy for your team to navigate a complex sales cycle, the combination of conversational intelligence and data intelligence and what it can do for frontline sellers, project management and value realization for the buyer, and finally, the top 3 tips and tricks to coach your team through a complex sales cycle. We're very excited for this. Lou, we would love for you to kick it off for us. What stack should you put in place to make it easy for your team to navigate a complex sales cycle?
All right. Well, we definitely need a decent amount of technology here, but it is all going to save a lot of time and give a lot more insight. So I think, obviously you need your CRM and that system of record where we're going to house, what happened and give the executive level the viewpoint. But we need some data intelligence tracking what's going on in the account and who's where, right? And you need that because you have the people you started the deal with that you're dealing with, but you got to know the lay of the land. Who are you missing? Who might you need later? What's their information? And you need to know what's going on in that account so that over time you're finding those little pieces of information you need, right? Like this just happened. I can play off of that. I can get an extra meeting because of this or what have you. You need your sales automation so that you're in constant communication. The thing I'm preaching the most at my team is whether you have a next meeting or not, are you sharing value? Are you sharing an insight with everyone you're dealing with every day? Are we totally multi-threaded and hitting lots of people about our company? And then, to the Chorus point, we started using Chorus 5 years ago. You need that conversation intelligence. I don't know how I did deals when I couldn't look back at what happened on my prior calls, or I couldn't share a moment with whoever else I'm bringing in. Today we have a lot of different products that we offer. I got to bring in specialists to my deal and to be able to show them, here's where they talked about this. This is why you're joining the next call is maybe the most critical thing to me now. I can't believe it. For years I was doing deals without it, but now that I don't have that now that I have that insight, I don't know how you live without it. So you need that conversation intelligence to tie everything you're working through together. Those are the biggest ones, I think.
Yeah, Mike, when because I know that that's obviously a really good laundry list there. Mike, what additional things do you think that folks should be considering when assisting with these complicated sales cycles? I know that at Seismic you had a pretty high ASP that you were working with.
For sure. Work some long cycles there for sure. So I think, I'm going to agree with Lou on everything he added there. I would say even just a more tactical level, right? When you're working long deals, oftentimes they die once or twice or three times before they get done. And if you're at a high growth share company as well, the ability to have that historical data on what the conversations were like before then, right, is really, really helpful and powerful so that you can meet your buyers where they are, which then leads me to the next one. I think having some sort of level of intent data, there's a lot of different tools, obviously, that offer that up, but understanding the folks that are, maybe you've had your first conversation, but there's a lot of people now coming to your website, downloading content, doing all these different things that give us indicators where folks are in their buyer's journey, I think is really important for sellers to understand. And then again, a bias of mine, but a sales enablement tool from the lens of content is hypercritical to get your sellers the things they need, wherever the buyer is in their journey, where they're in the process, but ultimately to create a better buyer experience as well. So I guess I'm just adding there.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess because if you think about it, in the longer the sales cycle typically correlated with high ASP. High ASP is going to be correlated with like multi-stakeholder. Multi-stakeholder is going to mean lots of different personas, and lots of different personas is going to mean like lots of different value propositions and kind of talk tracks and collateral for each of those. So that's where like it kind of gets complicated with it as a seller. Like if you like, what's the thing the CFO cares about? What's the thing the RVP cares about? What's the thing the line manager cares about? What's the thing the IC cares about? That relying on them to navigate that themselves, as opposed to like search for that or have it playbookized, is obviously kind of a tough thing to do there. Catherine, when you think about the stuff that is, must have for navigating a complex sales cycle, what are some things that you like to think about there?
Yeah, I would say from the very beginning, it doesn't matter what role you play in sales. If your enablement stack isn't locked and loaded, your team is just going to dangle in the wind if they don't know what to do, right? So we've implemented a full onboarding process through Lessonly that is repeatable, that is consistent. Every SDR gets the same message. It doesn't matter what region they're in. They do the same homework. We've implemented Gartner, which used to be Topo. That comes in and runs our enablement as well for SDRs. We take it a next step that targets personas, pain points, everything you need in order to be able to speak to the persona, because if you can't speak to your personas, you're not going to get anywhere either. And so it's really important, and the SDRs actually go through an entire cycle of homework that they're required to do. So on top of the Lessonly path, then they do their homework. And then once they're all ramped up and ready to go, I'd say one of the main tools that we use here at Coursera, we're a learning platform, and we've got a consumer side of our house and we have an enterprise side of our house. And we have a lot of consumers that take a lot of courses, and we use a lot of our Looker data to guide us on who's taking courses from which company. And we've put together the state of skills dashboard, like what courses are they taking? Is it data science? Is it these courses? And we correlate that into our personalized messaging. So if you don't have your own intent data internally, I would suggest really taking a look at Looker data. It really helps guide what your customers are doing within your own organization. And that also, to be honest with you, when we talk about like cross-selling and upselling, SDRs are starting to play a role in that as well. As our breadth of products increases and we're cross-selling into these organizations, just being able to have that information and where to guide the conversation is really, really helpful in just the beginning stages of the sales cycle, but also it helps lower the CAC, your customer acquisition cost as well, across the board, because you're able to actually acquire more customers within your own customer base. And it just helps drive additional revenue. So thinking outside of just even that box of just your own AE sales cycle and really focusing on the organization as a whole is really helpful when you're putting together your tech stack. Everybody needs a CRM, everybody needs a chorus, everybody needs a Zoom info. You need all of those to get moving, but how are you going to actually manage? And this is how we've learned to actually manage the sales cycle.
Yeah, that's interesting because you guys have obviously product-led growth or like bottoms-up sales behavior is a really emerging thing right now. Not everybody's got it,
Yeah.
right? Like, yeah, not everybody has, like, it's not like in the case of Coursera, there's a big consumer business where, you know, individual, like people who work at companies are doing things on Coursera as their, like, as an individual,
Right.
but if they're at a company, but they're doing professional things in a personal capacity, well, maybe the organization. And so like having that information can be a really great source. Yeah, there's a couple different, we do something similar as well. We use a piece of software called Census that allows us to pipe usage data into our CRM. So like we pipe usage data around, like, you know, dashboard views or profile views or what have you, both in a pre-transaction and a post-transaction environment. And so what you can do is you can mix that product data, the usage data, with kind of like marketing data as well, in order to say like, hey, who really care, like who's catching fire, et cetera, et cetera. And that can also be very helpful in a pre-transaction environment as well, for those kind of complex sales cycles, right? You can say, hey, which of these people are saying that they're champions versus like actually going like hard in the actual product, so you actually know that that's the case. Cool. So I think that the next thing that we wanted to talk about here was kind of this notion of like combining conversational intelligence with data intelligence, because like these are kind of like, and I guess we were just talking about this, there's like your own data, whether it's like product usage data, but in this case, it's like calls. And then there's like external data that might come from a data provider or what have you. And like by mixing that together, can you get like a 1 + 1 = 3 situation? Lou, I know that you had some things that you wanted to comment on that. Maybe you can kick us off on that.
Sure. Yeah. Look, there's a lot of ways to put this stuff together, and I think you know, people are figuring out a new one every minute. So, but to give you a couple ideas, right? The conversation intelligence of like what happened before can be helpful in so many more deals than that one call where it happened. So
Sure.
if I have a rep on my team and they're working a big complex deal on a bank, and I know that we just won a different bank and they had similar
Yep.
problems, to have my
Yep.
rep working the new deal, go back and look at the critical calls from that one we just won and see those moments. What did we showcase? What stories did we tell? What hit home, to make sure that my rep in the new deal is doing the same thing that won us the last one?
Yeah.
Super powerful. And if we don't do that, clearly there's a better chance that we're going to lose. So
Yeah.
you can take, you know, one of the ways you can do this is when you marry those two, hey, these are the deals we have on our plate, and it becomes really easy to see these are the deals we've won like that. And by the way, here are the calls that move that deal, rep. And so now that stuff's easy for our reps to get their hands on. That's the first way we use it. I think the other one I comment on is to use it to realize, Mike sort of touched on it earlier, where do we go back, right? What if something changed in your product? What are all the deals in the past that you didn't win where that came up?
Mhm.
You know, to be able to sort through all the calls your team's ever had and say, these ones were all held up because we weren't integrated with Dynamics or whatever it is. And now we are.
Sure.
And then to be able to easily cut that up and say, all right, territory wise, these deals belong to rep A and rep B and rep C. Hey, let's go run our program and let's get back at this because we have that piece that was missing before. And that's, you need to know the third party data of like what accounts what account matters. And then you know what happened before. And when you put that together, you can think of a million things to do with this.
That is, you mean that the reps don't put in the closed loss notes that it was the integration with Dynamics that was the key deal breaker, And then in the pick list, you that,
Right,
that
we
doesn't
could go
that
after
doesn't get
both of
recorded?
those deals, or we could go find a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I the ability to X-ray kind of like prior close loss reasons like that, kind of based on mentions, is pretty crazy. Um, Catherine, when you're thinking about kind of like external data sources and kind of conversational intelligence sources, like how do you think about mixing the pieces of data together?
We're currently using Drift right now, and we've implemented, I mean, we use Zoom Info. I think the intent data out of Zoom Info has really helped my team be successful, but also in the cross-sell application as well. We found plenty of other individuals who are searching for what we sell in the marketplace. So guiding the conversation that way, and then guiding them to our website to join us on a chat on Drift, right? Like, to me, that's really, really important,
Mhm.
where you can engage with the prospect immediately. And when we're having that conversation with the prospect and gathering their pain points, we've shortened the sales cycle for the account executive, right? Like, that qualification's done. And now we can just pass it off to a stage one opportunity. And that's really where my SDRs have found a lot of success, is utilizing that chat function. But also, really focusing on, our demand-based aspect in our marketing department too. I partner really, really well with my marketing team and how we can get more intent data out of demand base and synchronize that into even our website, where we can track if those particular companies are joining us on the website, and really following that through the sales cycle as well.
Love it. Mike, I know that you've you come from the kind of conversation intelligence side of the house over there. How have you seen kind of the mixing of these two data sources to be especially impactful?
Yeah. So to be candid, I didn't think it was gonna happen as fast from an integration perspective here. If I'm just gonna be candid,
Oh,
and
yeah.
to see all of that in one place now. In the past pushing 10 years of selling sales tools, I think number one at a strategic level is there's sales tool fatigue, if you will, is real. So like just having a disparate amounts of different sales tools and people having to go to different places is a real problem for adoption and productivity and a bunch of other things, right? So I think starting there for the business, it's a big piece. But as a seller, why it really should matter to you, yes, consolidation matters. Being in one place is great. But the ability to identify, like, talk about intent data, like who's buying now, right? How do I prioritize my day, my list, my accounts? The ability to then capture, well, let me take a step back, and then being in a tool that gives you the firmographics and understanding who's who in the zoo, if you will, within this account. You've got to do those things before you get a big call, especially you think in enterprise deals, multiple stakeholders. You want to identify who those folks are. You want to have a hypothesis on how they could benefit from your solution. You can get all of that data in a tool like ZI, right? So just understanding what's going on in their business, who's who. And then I think about it this way, right? Like everything ZI did before this acquisition was about making sure you could get those conversations. And now Chorus is about, okay, we've got you the conversations. Now we can record, transcribe, analyze those conversations as well, and have it all in one place is incredibly powerful. And then my last piece, I think about all the incredible sales data that we have, and I'm no data scientist, but I do know that whether it's ML or AI, it only gets smarter with more data. And you take the best AI in the conversation intelligence space, mix that with some really great data, sales data. Some really exciting things are happening.
I wanted to,
Catherine, you wanted to add something there?
Yeah, I wanted to add something there because I mean, I know we're telling all these sales leaders, we're telling everybody like, use this tool. This is amazing. This is so great. But let's be honest, like it's going to fall back on all of us to manage that tool, to enable our teams, to get our enablement team on board, to learn the tool, to get it working, to get it moving. It is hard. We get that. It is going to be really, really difficult because chances are these new conversational tools are new to you. Like Chorus was new to me. It still is new to me. We're learning something new about it every single day. Do we use it all the time? No, because it's new, right? And people are shy when they're coming around to it. But what we have done is, I'm going to go back to the enablement portion here really quickly, is we've worked with our Gartner partners to put together even like a call scorecard that we came up with that we integrated into Chorus. So
Right.
it's not like a manager is just sitting there and listening, but we actually have SDRs doing different scorecards for other SDRs across different regions.
Nice.
Share best practices. So find a way to make this easier on yourself. Don't delegate people. Delegate this out to other people to run these scorecards, to manage the tool for you as well. Find an ambassador on your team to manage the tool for you. Like, honestly, make it easy on yourself.
Love it.
So let's change gears a little bit here and talk about the complexity of like how to manage a complex sales motion or sales cycle, like the project management component of that. Like, what are effective ways that you've seen in helping reps kind of like not get lost? And like I can kind of add some of the things that we do here. So like one of the things, this kind of goes back to the product-led growth thing that that Catherine was kind of commenting on earlier. One of the things in our sales motion that's particularly compelling is, you know, it takes organizations like 90 seconds to turn on an Atrium account. Like they just OAuth in with Salesforce, and Atrium like pulls the data, and like automatically like that SDR manager, the AE manager is seeing a bunch of insights about their reps that otherwise like they wouldn't see. But that person doesn't necessarily have buying authority, right? Like their initial, like they're a champion, they might have buying authority, but a lot of times not, right? Like they're the end user who has the pain point and they recognize the pain. But then what we do is like now that we've done champion development with them, now we got to like route through the rest of the organization, right? And so in that kind of case, it kind of becomes a little bit of like a read option situation. Like, okay, what's the best approach here? You know, does it make sense for us to just go ahead and transact with you? Right? Can like you get budgetary resources just for yourself? Do you have them already at your disposal? Oh no, that's not how our organization buys. We actually have to validate that this is going to be useful for this many people in order for it to rise to the attention of blah, 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 right? And so if you think about that, that's kind of like that's like mutual plan creation there with that initial champion. And so then the thing then becomes like, okay, how do we arm that champion, right? And I think that that's something that organizations kind of have historically done in like a little bit of a haphazard fashion. I think the more you can kind of create artifacts of like value as you're kind of like traveling through that sales process, the better off you can be. The way that we do this right now, you guys will laugh at this. We have this like deck template, shocking, right? It's a Google Slides, Google slide deck. We haven't implemented any sort of like mutual plan software just yet, but we have this like templated slide deck that has a bunch of different, like it has slides with like collateral and whatever. It's like, this is how Atrium works, and like here's our customer testimonial videos, and here's an animated explainer video, and blah blah blah. And then it has a bunch of like blank slides or like blank templates there that the AEs start putting stuff into. And it's actually ends up being really effective. We call it the hot pocket because it's full of you know, gooey goodness, right? Delicious goodness. And so what ends up happening is like as you kind of travel through the organization, not only are you, it's got like discovery slides in it, which then kind of characterize the discovered pain points and kind of their implications. So as you're traveling through the organization and you meet a new person, it's like, oh, okay, of course, we're going to do discovery on you now, right? And we're going to figure out what are the potential, like the specific pain points that you have that are kind of like the biggest pains in your butt. And then we're going to add that back there, right? So what ends up happening is that this like hot pocket, to kind of extend the metaphor here, oddly, kind of like grows and grows and grows as you're kind of like accreting this information throughout the organization. And then also you're creating this really great asset such that when you get to that decision maker meeting or the economic buyer meeting or what have you, you've got like, essentially you've got this like badass asset where it's like, hey, so this is the research we've done across your organization, the pain points and the implications associated therewith. And here's the value that we've proven so far. So like, you know, honestly, you just have to like issue the PO. Right. And so obviously it doesn't shake out that way, unfortunately, but like that's a way that we approach it to help our to help our reps like project navigate better. It's more about like asset creation versus like the actual project management. But that's something that's been really effective for us. I think sorry, Lou, what what have you seen work with your teams?
So, I think it's funny. There's a little bit of similarity there. We end up building over time. We're trying to build towards a proposal. So we actually use Google Doc and we put a lot of stuff together. But when we're trying to push to get the whole buyer panel together or get to power, and we start doing this from call one.
Yeah.
Can we get to power? Why not? What do we have to do to get here? Continually asking. And even if maybe you have to take a lot of steps before you get there sometimes, if you're asking every time, maybe you get 20% of them, well, you're 20% better off. But Vidyard recaps or video recaps of, hey, we just did an hour call. Here's the 2-minute version of what you really cared about. Can you please share that up the ladder? Much more likely to get shared than your long email, much more likely to get watched, at least the first 25 seconds of it, right? So make the first 25 seconds really, really good. And
you mean an email with like this much text doesn't get written? Weird. Or it doesn't get read, excuse me.
But it gets written all the time. So trying to get my
that's true.
reps out of that, stop doing that and send this. The other one that has worked very often, along with pushing your champion, please, we need power on here. You care about this. Why wouldn't they give us some time? Here's a first version of a conservative ROI calculator. And putting the numbers together, again, not lots of text, just a really clear look at like, here's one way you're going to save. Come let me prove this. And to continually value drip that stuff that could be easily shared piece by piece is really important. And then we put those pieces in the proposal. And when we get there, we kind of have it all, but we're delivering it little bit by little bit. My concern would be, I got this big doc and everyone's like, oh, there's 12 slides on here, so I'm not going to look at it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things. Yeah, yes, that collateral asset is not to be consumed on its own. It is a selling tool that gets sold over, ideally in a synchronous meeting. Oh, we can't get a synchronous meeting. Okay, well then rather than sending the asset and expecting someone to consume it asynchronously, good luck. Instead, do an asynchronous prezo of it using Vidyard or Cloud App or Loom or whatever. We do something similar where in that hot pocket, obviously what my reps are supposed to do is like, hey, I'm really excited about this. I have a standing one-on-one with my boss, like to talk about that. Oh, well, like I'd love to join the first 5 minutes of that meeting. I do this all the time. Like I can just show up. We can have that conversation. You guys can kick me out, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously that's more ideal. Nah, he's got a thing about like vendors, like, has an allergic reaction. Oh, okay, wonderful. Well, here's this asset for it. Let's go ahead and you and I do it together. And also I'll just record it here and we'll put that as the first slide, right? First slide with a big fat like play button in the front there. Mike, what, when you think about the project management of these kind of like complex sales cycles, what are some things that you've seen kind of work there?
Sure. So I think, well, a lot of what we've talked about is, mutual engagement plans, things of that nature, right? I think instead of, repeating some of that, I think a big piece of it, and I mentioned this before, but I just want to drive it home, like understanding where that buyer is in their journey is critical, right? Because how are you going to manage the project and take it to execution if you just show up with your intro slide deck, show them that, go to next steps, take the moment to have proper discovery, not an interrogation, show up with the insights, understand their business, do your research, all of those things. Because there's a lot of data out there where it says, I think it was CSO Insights that 70% of their buyer's journey before they meet you for a lot of prospects is already done, right? Because they've gone to G2 Crowd, they've checked the Forrester Wave, they've gone to your website, they've done all of this stuff. So meeting them where they are and providing value immediately matters a ton, because then from there, you can understand where they are and you don't have to add as many steps. So if you're trying to navigate a complex sales cycle, make sure you're not the one making it more complex, right? So like understand where they are, have the history of what they've probably looked at you in the past before. They may be pretty well educated on the space. So I think that piece is really really important. And then it's the project management internally. Like, how do I use my resources internally to go out and take down a 6 or 7 or 8 figure deal, right? In order to do that, if you're out on an island on your own, you're in trouble. So manage the prospect with the mutual engagement plan. But I'll give you an example too, right? Like, thinking about a deal that I worked young in my individual contributor days, made some mistakes. My BDR got me to.
No.
I was a fireman, and all of a sudden I'm selling software, right? Bound to make a few mistakes, but my BDR got me a great meeting, C-level meeting with one of my top prospects. We had a great conversation, and then they inevitably, because I wasn't having a C-level conversation, if I'm gonna be honest, put me with the I don't want to say lower level, but the management, kind of project management sort of team. And I couldn't figure out why, and it's because I wasn't having the right types of conversation with the C-level, but luckily course corrected over the course of my career, even in that deal. That happens to a lot of sellers. So my advice is, how do I keep that C-suite engaged? And it's being thoughtful, It's being smart, it's sending them updates on what's going on within the opportunity, sending them clips within the course, your other conversation tools, saying, hey, this is what we heard today, blah, 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 blah. So things like that. And then setting real expectations with the prospects. Throughout, when you think about project management, it starts with each call. You got to do all the work up front. This is what we're doing here today. If we all agree on these 3 things and we did what we were supposed to, this is where we're going. And working together as a team to actually get to the end zone together, opposed to just trying to figure out like, hey, are they going to buy? Where are they? Like, being more direct and understanding it so that it's a partnership, opposed to just trying to sling some software at the end of the month.
Right, totally. We had a question come in here earlier that I wanted to make sure that just Mark had a question here regarding. Let me see if I can paraphrase this. So, I break our sales and marketing activity into service demand and create demand. Yep. So I mean, that's like a pretty good marketing model. Servicing demand is, where we've got known solutions, like we're kind of talking about. Like, I've got I need a CRM. Here are the CRM vendors, and obviously intent data there. But where does intent data help with the creating of the demand, right? So we can do research and discos to uncover unknown pains, but that's a verbal conversation versus, okay, well, how do we use data to find folks that don't know that they have a problem yet? Lou, do you want to maybe take a crack at this?
Well, I would start by saying you can get intent on things that people are doing that might mean they're likely to have a problem, right? So correlated. I'm an office furniture company. I want to sell furniture when companies are moving. Well, I can wait till they sign a lease, and then I might be too late. Or I could use intent to say, who's looking for real estate brokers? And you're going to get the broker. Then you go find your space. Then you need your furniture. And now I'm going early, right? And I'm starting to brand them, and I'm starting to get, the concepts behind them. Hopefully my SDR is helping me build a relationship. So what are those things that are in and around the possible problems you have, right? So you think about the typical symptoms happening, and then what would somebody be researching on the internet if their business runs that way, and start figuring out those companies. Now you're 2 levels earlier, but know that and build your marketing program around that. And then you're going to catch, some of them are going to hit that part where they truly have that problem, or where you can help them see that they have the problem from great creation content.
I'm going to chime in here really quickly, because we actually gave our marketing team ZoomInfo licenses, and they use the intent data to draft campaigns around those particular individuals that are searching for, like Lou was suggesting. So that's why I'm curious, Mark, if you can type in the chat, are you in sales? Are you in marketing? Which part of the house are you in? Because if you can somehow partner with your marketing team, if you aren't on the marketing team, to really introduce them to intent data, whether it's ZoomInfo, whether it's a different company, it really doesn't matter. But using those using those contacts and those accounts and driving specific marketing campaigns towards those individuals. So it's not just your SDRs outbounding into those individuals. It's not just your account executives. It's actually everyone together utilizing that intent data. And if you can get those campaigns to be very persona specific based on the product and the fit, right, your inbound marketing, inbound flow is going to increase wildly, and so is your brand.
Yeah, awesome. Well, now is the part of the of the conversation where we turn to questions from the audience. So as folks have questions, just go ahead and drop them in the chat here, and we can kind of get to them or put them in the Q&A panel. So kind of one question I wanted to start with here that's very, very specific to this notion of navigating complicated sales cycles. So like, how do you decide if you want to go for the big deal or start with a smaller group? And some, some products don't have the luxury of choosing, right? It's like an end-to-end thing. It's like, oh, you can't just like sell Workday to like one group or whatever, right? But sometimes you can break it up. So like, how do you folks think about trying to take a smaller bite of the apple to start, or like trying to take a bigger bite of the apple to start? Maybe Mike, we can start with you on this.
Yep. So I think a big piece of that is, time to value, depending on what product you're selling, right? Like if you have a product
Sure.
you could stand up very quickly, get immediate data and insights on, and have folks up and running quickly. There certainly is a school of thought that says, hey, let's do that, kind of that product-led growth I think you mentioned before, right?
Yep.
Some folks don't have that luxury, and the value is there for their tool, but it's over time, right? If it's maybe a marketing tool or maybe something else that I'm not as familiar with. I would also caution folks on the smaller deal. You want to feel really good if you're selling it to one of your biggest clients that the folks you're with are gonna drive the project. It's big enough so that it's not like, oh, if we spend a few K and it doesn't work, we'll just move on. Like there's got to be a big enough piece of the pie.
Like it's real.
Yeah, and then executive sponsors on both sides of the house, I think, is really important if you're going to go small. For me, I mean, we all want to go big, right? I think there's a way to do it. To your point, sometimes you just have to, depending on the tech that you're selling. But I think a lot of it goes to your pregame research, understanding what is going on with the business, digging into their 10Ks and their financials, and understanding like, hey, I'll use an example, not the company, of one of the best sellers that I've met, dug in and realized the company, publicly traded company, had missed their quarterly numbers. I think it was like 20 quarters in a row or something wild like that. They needed to go and make a major impact, right? And if you're rolling it out to 10 sellers, like, I don't care, you're going to make an impact with those 10 sellers. But if you're trying to go across a business and do something big, then you really need to be able to tell that story and then empower your champions to do it. I think my last piece is having the infrastructure in place to go big, right? To make sure that if you're going to roll out a sales tool to 20,000 sellers, that you have the people, the customer success team, the process in place to make them successful. And my last thing that I said last thing, I think 3 times now, but Catherine made a good point. It's about using your resources. So like, if you want to go big and you're by yourself, you're never going to do it. But if you want to use, for instance, a BDR team, you're with you've made the decision for a number of reasons, you're going to go big. Don't just stay with the folks you're working with. You got your BDR team to use as part of the sales pursuit. You're with one division, have them reach out, see if they have common challenges. Like they might have budget as well. Like you can create this momentum internally that you otherwise wouldn't, right? And it protects you a little because you're not going above somebody's head. It's somebody else in your team doing these things for you. So if you decide to go big, make sure you're in a place to be able to do it, and that you have the people and resources to make sure you can go out and execute that way.
Lou, I know that you guys have the ability to kind of like, I mean, at this point, ZoomInfo's got like a bajillion different products, right? So you can slice it that way. Let's just sell one product or a couple of products. I imagine you can also start with like smaller packages or whatever, this team versus that team versus whatever. So there's obviously kind of like a complex decision tree. How do you guys navigate like this decision-making process?
Yeah. So, well, the first thing is it's a lot easier to go from big to small than small to big. So take your chance, right? And and try to work with your buyer there. But when your buyer starts to hedge, you have to understand their concerns. You have to understand their why. And to Mike's point, as long as they're bought incorrectly, if you have something you can sell or you would sell in a different situation, like from my perspective, it's the right thing to do for the customer to let them start the way they want and go. And so you shouldn't hold that back. But additionally, you got to think about like, what happens if you don't do it their way? Are they just going to go with the competitor, right? Because then you got nothing. And now you're in a really big hole. So, you want to make the compelling argument. You want to try to sell. I don't think it's really worth, the last thing you want is your rep trying to shrink deals because they just feel empowered, like they'll get the deal done more often that way. You want to go with how the customer buys things and how the customer attacks a need. And move from there. But
I kind of think about it as I may have used the term read option earlier because like so much in sales is like decision trees. Like you want to start out like, hey, is there an initiative around this? Oh yeah, we've missed XYZ for 20 quarters in a row. Cool. We're gonna this is gonna be a big splash. It's gonna be a long sales cycle. Like, let's get muscled up for that. Versus, oh yeah, like there's not an initiative right now. I'm kind of thinking about it like 2 quarters out or whatever. Oh, okay, cool. That doesn't mean that there can't be a transaction. It just means that there probably can't be a massive transaction here. And so if you know that you can make that, so like now we just went through one of the branches of the decision tree. We're like, okay, cool. It's not a big initiative, right? Or alternatively, it might be the flip side, like you were just saying, Lou, where it's like, hey, like, so say maybe like, is there initiative around this? Yeah, there is, and there isn't. And then we get down here. It's like, and then we like do discovery, get somebody excited. So how do you guys go about doing this? Well, the only way that we're actually will entertain a solution is if there's like, X amount of people who are bought in. Oh, okay, right. So in that case, it's like selling them like that single, little package isn't really going to matter. Like, A, they don't want to buy that way because it's like not worth their attention, right? Or maybe there's like IT implementation or whatever. So that now means like, okay, I guess we have to do like a middling deal. And then that points to the solution, or sorry, the sales motion. Like, okay, I guess we're going to have to do some champion development and kind of like do a little bit more of like a, pulling together a coalition here. But it's still kind of like making sure that you know where you're at in that decision tree and then doing the appropriate thing as opposed to like trying to force a square peg in the round hole. Last, Catherine, did you have anything that you wanted to add there on like deciding for like big deals versus like starting with smaller folks there and how that kind of works at Coursera?
Yeah, what we implemented was actually more of a transactional flow that if an AE is seeing that, oh, it's going to be under a certain dollar amount. Yeah, it's a big logo, but we're not going to spend the time on it. We send them through what we call a West transaction, and the company can actually purchase those licenses through a credit card. And then we follow back up with them and we're able to upsell them and sell them on our larger platform. So that seems to be a really great revenue driver. If you don't have that opportunity, I would suggest being that, I would totally be that path paver. Start one, because it is the new way that people are buying. Everyone's buying online now. They're remote first. There's the lack of in-person meetings. We have to take into account what our environment is giving to us, and we have to adapt to that as well. I was going to answer though the questions that have been in the chat for a little bit. Any recommendations for international tools for data? I would recommend, if you are running into issues, take a look at Lucia, take a look at Lead IQ. Those are really great tools that I've used in the past for data collection. And then talking to key KPIs, you're tracking sales usage of these tools. I mean, you're putting those tools up. So it's going to take some time to get those key KPIs on board. I mean, if you're using demand-based, that's something I would really let your marketing department kind of work through and set those KPIs and set the actual measurement of those tools. I'd also suggest like utilizing drift. It's like time to touch. How long are people waiting? How quickly do they convert? Do they become an MQL right away? Looking at that MQL to, we use the term SQL conversion ratio. And then from SQL conversion ratio up to SAL conversion ratio, I think is pretty important. We do a time to touch on MQLs as well to see if we don't touch them within a certain amount of time, how does that impact our conversion ratios as well? So we dive pretty deep into those sales activities. Isabel, we can talk about this all day long, like it's a webinar in itself. So feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to go deeper for you.
Nice. Cool. Well, I think we're kind of at time. We need to do our wrap up here. So Elizabeth, you want to take us home?
Sure. So before we wrap up, I'm going to ask all three of you to just give us a quick tweet length key takeaway from today's event. What is the item you want people to walk away with? Mike, I'm going to start with you.
Yes, for sure. So if you're an enterprise seller chasing deals, I'd say number one is take a deep breath. It's going to be a marathon, and you got to be pretty cerebral, right? So just like between the ears, make sure you're doing okay, and make sure you're working closely with your manager. My big thing I've said before, I want to drive it home again, have a strategy, a hypothesis on the value you're bringing to these folks before you ever speak to them, so that you're in a position to go win their business and get them thinking big, right? Team sell, align your internal stakeholders, quarterback your deals, be loud, be noisy, even tell your manager what to do on these big deals. We're looking for that. So don't be afraid to. And never, ever stop with the discovery process. If you're in a long sales cycle, there's a lot going on. So new things happen, new people. And my last tip, the competitor you always forget about, it's not the status quo, though that's a big one, and it's not your other competitors. You got to understand what else is going on in the business, because if you're trying to go get a big deal at a large enterprise, there's a lot of people competing and fighting over budget, and you need to get to the folks that have the discretionary budget to do so. So understand what else is going on in the business that you don't even think is a competitor, but you're competing with for dollars and cents.
All right.
That's
Love
it.
it. Lou, over to you.
I think whether the deal's in progress or in the past marked lost, leverage the conversations your team has had to direct where you're going next. Get your team to watch and listen to the conversations that you've had. Have your marketing team use them to their advantage. There's a ton of gold in any meeting that your team ever has.
Perfect. And Catherine, bring us home with your tweet length takeaway.
I mean, listen, don't be lazy. You're here to work. You know, the deal's not going to fall in your lap. You're going to have to talk to your prospects. You're going to have to talk to that buyer. You're going to have to find the budget. You're going to have to give updates to your manager. If you're not performing, you're probably going to have to give up more updates to your manager, because no one knows what's going on. The more you work at it, the more successful you're going to be. That's just all there is to it. You just got to work. Welcome.
All right, fantastic. Yeah. Well, we're gonna wrap. Sorry.
I was gonna say, I think the thing that the biggest takeaway for me from this is really just like helping your reps know where they're at in a deal, right? In that enterprise deal, like where they are in the decision tree, right? Such that you're not trying to force a square peg into the round hole, and you're meeting the buyers. You're selling to them the way that they will most effectively be able to buy, and then buy more in the future, right? I think that was a really big takeaway for me.
Perfect. Fantastic. Well, we're going to wrap things up. But first, we want to thank everyone for attending. We've loved having you all here. Thank you to our wonderful sponsor, Chorus. Not only are they lovely, but they're doing great things. So be sure to check them out. And thank you also to Lou, Mike, Catherine, and Pete for providing all of this great content. The recordings and key takeaways will be available for you shortly, but don't forget to check out our upcoming events. We always love to see MSPers everywhere when we're doing things. Stay safe. We'll see y'all later.
Thank you all. Take care.
Bye. Thanks.